Hello, and of Exit Rich. And you hear me saying this every week. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the guests that we have this week. But now you really have to believe me. I am super excited and really thrilled to be interviewing the one, the only Dr. Ivan Misner. Dr. Ivan Misner. Who has heard of BNI? Who has heard of BNI? I don't even have to say what BNI stands for, even though it's Business Network. I don't have to say that. Why? Because everybody already knows who BNI is. There's chapters all over the world. I've been a member of BNI for decades. So Dr. Ivan Meisner, let's get that right. Dr. Meisner, Ivan Meisner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization. BNI was founded in 1985. Dr. Meisner, how many chapters are there around the world?
As of this morning, 10,926. I get a daily report.
Wow. How many countries?
76 countries.
My gosh. So you're in all those different languages.
Yes, yeah, we
That's
have many
impressive.
languages. Going to a BNI convention is like going to a United Nations meeting with the flags all over the room. But it's like a UN meeting where all the countries like each other. So it's a blast.
Wow, you have managed to really accomplish something then. If everybody can go and everybody likes each other and everybody can get along, that's an
Yeah,
amazing accomplishment. So BNI again was founded in 1985. The organization has thousands of chapters. He just said
26.
10,926. Each year, BNI generates millions and millions of referrals, resulting in billions of US dollars worth of business for members. Dr. Meisner's PhD is from the University of Southern California, where I'm also from. He has written over, okay, I got to take a pause here. He's written over 24 books. I've written three and thought I was doing well.
Well, it's 28 now. It's up to 28.
Oh my gosh, they need to update your bio. They just can't keep up with you, can they?
Yeah, I guess so.
Your team's got to update your bio. So 28, I know we have one that's coming out. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But 28 books now, including many Amazon and New York Times bestsellers. It's my understanding you have seven New York Times bestsellers.
No, three New York Times bestsellers, but about 20 of the 28 book are bestsellers in some media,
Okay, so
Amazon or
three,
Wall Street Journal.
but even three New York Times bestsellers is a huge
Yeah,
accomplishment. I mean, we had the numbers for Exit Rich to be a New York Times bestseller. I don't know if you know Sharon Lechter, but she's my co-author.
I don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, I know of her.
She's my.
We've never met, but I know of her. Yes.
We had the numbers to make it, and we didn't make the list. So it's quite the accomplishment to make the New York Times even once, but let alone three times. He is a monthly columnist for entrepreneur.com and has taught business management and social capital courses for several universities throughout the United States. Called the father of modern networking by CNN and the networking guru. The networking guru. I think we can all really be better networkers for sure. Meisner is considered to be one of the world's leading experts on business networking, and he has been a keynote speaker to major corporations and associations throughout the world. He has been featured in the LA Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, as well as numerous TV and radio shows, including CNN and CNBC and the BBC of London. Dr. Meisner has been named, and this is what I think is the most important about your bio. I mean, all that was terrific, amazing accomplishments, but Dr. Meisner has been named Humanitarian of the Year, and that was by the Red Cross and was awarded the John C. Maxwell Award for Leadership. So that was a mouthful.
Sorry.
And so, welcome to the show, Dr. Meisner.
Thanks. And please call me Ivan.
All right, welcome to the show, Ivan. Ivan, you sure?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure.
All right, Ivan, we're happy to have you here. So, my gosh, and in your spare time, you are an amateur magician.
Amateur
Um,
being
I,
the operative word.
I know I asked you to do a trick on a show today, and you're like, I don't have my
I don't have
stuff
any
with
magic
me.
tricks here, and it's been a while since I've done it. I was a member like 10 years ago. I was a member of the Magic Castle in LA. I was a magician member, and
Wow.
I never did shows. I did stuff for my kids, but I got really good at it and was able to qualify to be a magician member at the Magic Castle.
How many kids, Dr.
Three,
Weiser or Ivan?
three
Three.
kids.
Okay.
The youngest is
Well,
29.
wow. And they followed in your
You
footsteps?
know, none of them were really interested in BNI, which, I kept telling them, do what you're passionate about. And by golly, they did that. And it wasn't BNI.
So they listened to you.
Yeah.
Good advice. And you're a black belt in karate, so I'll make sure to stay on your good list.
Okay, good.
So you've been so wildly successful. I mean, BNI is without a doubt one of the largest community business to business B2B network
Yeah.
in the world, right?
Yes. It is.
And
It's the
so I
largest business networking organization in the world. Definitely.
the
Yeah.
largest. Okay. So I came and began to think, what was Dr. Ivan Misner like as a little boy? What were you like as a little boy?
Um, I pretty much stayed out of trouble. I was a pretty good kid, I wasn't very confident, as most of us are in junior high and whatever. I had a teacher who I'll make a somewhat long story really short. I wanted to be in student council. I kept getting voted down in junior high. And I had a teacher in high school who, for whatever reason, saw something in me, and nobody wanted to run for student council in this class. And he picked me. He said, Ivan, I bet you'd like to do it. And I said, yeah, actually, I would. And it was really funny because the whole class was like, oh, no, not Ivan. And I was not very popular. And he's like, nope, you gave me the power to choose. I choose Ivan. He's it. And it was really changed the trajectory of my young life, in that I was able to take a leadership role that I had wanted to do for a long time, was never very popular. And from that same class elected me for the student council for the next year. The same class who was like, oh, no, not Ivan, then elected me because I did a great job. So I was very active in student council for 4 years. I ended up being ASB president. And that really changed the direction of my life in terms of taking on a role of leadership. And so I was very active. I was in some sports, but very active in student government.
So, what led you to starting the largest business network organization?
Yeah, well, I was a management consultant. I was young. I was 27 when I was running my consulting business. And I lost a pretty big client who didn't renew their contract. And by then I'm 28 years old, and I'd gotten all my business through speaking engagements and referrals. And I had just bought a house, and I had a mortgage that felt this big. And I realized that I could go get speaking engagements, but I needed a system to get referrals. So I put together a group of people who I trusted, and I hoped that they would trust me. And we agreed to refer each other, and we got together every week. It was a weekly meeting, and we took only one person per profession because I didn't want my competition in the room, and I didn't think they wanted their competition in the room. And I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization, but I just needed some referrals for my consulting business. So we got together, and someone came after a couple of months to the meeting, and she couldn't join because her profession was represented. And she said, this is fantastic. I could get a lot of business out of a group like this. Would you help me open up my own group? And I said, no, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network. And she said, well, this is kind of consulting. You're helping me build my business. It's a stretch, but okay, fine. And so I opened a second chapter, and two people came to that second meeting. They couldn't join because their profession was represented. And both of them said, this is great. I could get a ton of business. Would you help me open up my own group? And I'm like, no, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. And they talked me into it, and then we were off to the races. I ended up opening 20 chapters that year without trying.
I mean, at the age of
28,
28,
yeah.
29 years old is pretty, you know, a huge, huge, huge
Well,
accomplishment.
it didn't
No
seem like it
doubt.
at the time. I mean, we were a small.
You probably didn't even know what you had when you
I
started.
didn't.
Like you started there
No.
for your own business to create referrals, and that's where some of the best businesses and best opportunities come from. Is a need that we find ourselves, that we have ourselves, and
Yeah.
that's how so many entrepreneurs end up solving problems for the
And I
world.
kind of came to that conclusion in December. So the group had been around almost a year. Between Christmas and New Year's, I always take a few days off to do goal setting.
Hmm.
Where do I want to be at the end of next year? Where do I want to be in 5 years? How was last year's plan compared to reality? And on that particular year, that was, I call it my Brody moment. I had my Brody moment. It was like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? I opened 20 groups. And if you remember in the movie Jaws, Sheriff
Yeah,
Brody at the end
yeah, yeah.
of the movie, the shark comes up. He sees the shark. He turns to the captain and he says, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
Boat.
And that was my Brody moment. It was like, I'm going to need a bigger boat. This is going to be way bigger than I ever thought. And I created my plan to scale the operation. And it began with education, teaching people, because we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. So it really began with writing down what worked at networking, which ended up becoming many of my books.
Hmm.
And so at the end of the first year, I kind of knew that this was going to be huge.
Hmm. Huge is right. So how did it just was it like the domino effect where you had that one lady say, "Help me," and then you set up her chapter, and another one probably said, "Help me set up my chapter." It was kind of a domino effect. Did you really have to advertise, market
No,
it?
didn't do hardly any marketing. It was almost all word of mouth. In the first year or two, I did do a couple of ads and they failed. And I asked an ad specialist, why did these? I mean, I got a few phone calls and I got phone calls from people that were in professions that were already represented, like real estate and accounting. And, they were already represented. So I couldn't place them. So not only was I not able to place them, they got mad that they would spend the time calling me and I couldn't help them. So I asked this ad specialist, and he said, Advertising is great for basically pre-sold ideas. That is, you want to buy a computer, you look for an ad for computers. There's something you want to buy, you look for an ad. You want to join a network, you don't look for an ad.
Yeah,
So I stopped advertising after the first year, and we built completely through referrals and word of mouth.
unbelievable. So what is the art to networking? I'm an extreme introvert. I feel like I'm a great networker, but even I feel like, oh my gosh, I just went to that mastermind and all I did is the mastermind I go to every quarter and all I did was hang out with the same people. And,
Yeah. Well, you don't want to do that. You do want to mix and mingle with.
and I do, but yeah. So what is the art of networking? How can we all be better networkers?
So the foundation of what I teach is called the VCP process: visibility, credibility, profitability. Uh,
Visibility, credibility,
yeah.
profitability. If my team can put that in the notes, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Those three things, VCP. I went to I was the keynote speaker in London at an event years ago, maybe 900 people in the audience. And I don't know what possessed me, but I watched, it was an all day thing. I was one of the last speakers. And, and I watched people use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. They were just pitching each other. And so when I was on stage, I said, how many of you are here today hoping to maybe possibly sell something? And Michelle, I saw 900 people raise their hands. The whole audience raised their hand. I'm like, great. Second question, how many of you are here today hoping to, maybe just possibly buy something? Nobody raised their hands. Not one single person. I said, look, that's what I would call the networking disconnect. People show up at networking events wanting to sell, but they're not there to buy. So why go?
Except for me, because I'm the first to run to the back of the line, to the back of the room, and get that product.
Well, you get the book though from the speaker, not necessarily the people you meet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So you
yes.
might buy from the speaker because why? Because you hear them talk and you're interested in their message and they're an expert in their field. But for the people you meet, it's rare that you meet somebody and you go, "Oh my goodness, I need that. I want to buy that. Give me your card. I'm going to call you." I mean, that's rare. I
Right.
mean, it happens, but look, even a blind squirrel can find a nut. You'll stumble over business. But people generally use the networking as face-to-face cold calling. So then why go to a network if the face-to-face cold calling is not working? You go to a network to work your way through the VCP process. So first,
And VCP one more time, and if somebody's listening on my team, please put it in the
yeah, I'm going to
comments.
go through it in detail. It stands
Okay,
for
good.
visibility, credibility, profitability.
Visibility, credibility,
So
profitability.
you first have to be visible. People have to know who you are, right? You go to a networking meeting and you're meeting somebody for the first time. They don't know who you are, and that's where people will hand you. I have people who hand me 2 or 3 cards, and they go, "Hey, maybe you'll give this to a business associate." And I'm like, "I don't even know who you are. I'm not going to give one of your cards to somebody. I don't even know who you are." So first, you got to be visible. People have to know who you are. Then over time, you move to credibility. Credibility is where
Yep.
people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. You've built a reputation in the community so that they know you're good at what you do. Then when you go from visibility to credibility, which it's the credibility stage that takes the longest, then and only then can you get to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to refer you. This isn't a sales process, so it's not like they're willing to buy from you.
Mhm.
It's a referral process, so that they're willing to refer people to you. And that takes time. There's something I call the time confidence curve. And the time confidence curve on one axis is confidence, and on the other axis is time. And it takes a certain amount of time before people have confidence in your ability to provide a quality product or service. And the time confidence curve of moving through VCP varies depending on the profession. So if you're a florist, the time confidence curve is pretty quick. You can go from visibility to profitability pretty quick. But if you're a printer, it's a little longer. If you're a real estate agent, it's longer. If you're a financial planner investing somebody's retirement plan, it's the end of the spectrum. That's the longest on the time confidence curve. It takes the longest before somebody is going to refer business to you.
And I'm going to add to that and sell a company. It takes a long time.
Well, yeah, if you
Transit.
want a transaction of some kind, it's definitely a process that takes generally more than a year,
Yeah.
depending on where you
And
are.
you are so right with visibility, credibility, profitability, because everybody goes in wanting to put money in their pocket,
Yeah.
right? Everybody thinks about what can I make? How can I get a return on my investment at this mastermind, at this event?
Yeah, but the thing is that networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about
About
cultivating relationships with people. The old saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." I don't
absolutely.
think it's either.
What do you think it
I don't
is?
think it's what you know or who you know. It's how well you know each other that counts. I mean, I have some incredible contacts in my telephone, but it doesn't matter that I just know them. What counts is, could I call them? Would they take my call? And if I
Mhm.
asked for a favor, would they be willing to do the favor? So it's not
Yes.
just what you know or who you know, it's how well you know them. How credible are you with them? That if you ask for a favor, they'd say, "Yeah, sure, of course, I'd do that for you."
I have probably one of the best connectors on my team of all time. I'm not going to say his name, but he knows who he is. That is really, really, really good at connecting. Like he'll find somebody on LinkedIn, he'll nourish that relationship for a year or two. And one of the relationships he nourished was somebody who's brilliant in AI, and he relocated him to where we are here in New Orleans. And he's a brilliant connector and really, really great at building those deep, deep, deep relationships. As we're to where these individuals become his brother, they fight like brothers.
Yeah,
In fact, they also look alike.
that's funny.
But he's really good at that. I do have a. Oh, did you want to elaborate on profitability?
Well, profitability is where you know someone so well. You're at such a strong credibility that you want to refer them. that you are giving referrals to them, to your best clients, your best associates. And when you have a really good relationship of credibility, you actually meet with the people that you want to refer, and you say, okay, so I've got 2 or 3 clients that I really think could use your services. I'm going to talk to them next week. I'll make an introduction, and then that person does the same for you. So you exchange connections, and then you make introductions. So it's not like, oh, here's somebody who needs your service, give them a call. It's, here's somebody that wants your service. I'll make an introduction, and it's that introduction that paves the
Right.
way. Referrals are like 75-80% more likely to turn into a sale than a lead off of an advertisement.
Yeah, I can agree more. What's your thoughts on the elevator pitch?
Well, elevator pitches, look, everybody needs an elevator pitch. The thing is, I'm not a big fan of the term, because it's like you should never pitch somebody in an elevator. That's, the first thing I say is don't pitch people in an elevator. But the idea is that you tell somebody what it is that you do in roughly the amount of time that it takes to go from a high floor down to
I would
low.
say most people understand that concept because it's common sense, but common sense
Yeah, but
is
I've seen
not
people
always
do
so
the
common.
elevator pitch in elevators.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I say. Common sense is not always so common,
Right,
right?
that's exactly right. So the idea is that you want to say something short and sweet that really gets people's attention. You want to use a unique selling proposition, something that really gets their attention. And I have a really good friend, Sam Horn. She's written a book called Pop and Some Days Not a Day of the Week. She calls it the eyebrow test. You want to pass the eyebrow test. The eyebrow test is this: if you say something to someone about what you do and they scrunch their eyebrows down, you've just confused them. They have no idea what it is you've done. So if you say what it is that you do and they say, how do you do that? You've lost them.
It's
Okay.
confusing. Yeah.
Now you pass the eyebrow test if the eyebrows go up, right? So, and it can be the
Right.
same words. How do you do that? Right? Same words, different inflection. You got their attention. So
That's one of your magic
that's
tricks.
one of my magic tricks. I said, well, and I got to give credit to Sam. It's her concept of the eyebrow test. But so you use a unique selling proposition that has a good hook. There's a company called Ascentive that they say we help people work less, make more, and create referrals for life.
Mm.
And that we help people create referrals for life is like, ooh, how do you do that? Tell me more. And okay, now you got them. Now you can have a conversation with them. And that's, and the elevator pitch should literally be 2 floors down the elevator, not a long thing, but you want
It's
people.
specific. It's kind of like when I've been on the pitch tank a few times, and it's kind of like when people are pitching me because I do partner with people, I do invest in businesses. Their pitch is like it needs so much work, especially when they get into their
Yeah,
business, and they just over describe, and it's so
yeah.
confusing, and nobody can really make a quick decision because nobody understands what they're
Well,
doing.
one of the things that you want to do when you're going into more details, you want to talk about the afters.
The
The
afters,
afters.
okay.
Yeah, what's your life going to look like after I do what I do? That's the key. What I do is not terribly important. What's your life going to look like after I do what I do? And I'll give you a great example. I had a BNI chapter, and they were brainstorming about how to explain what it is they do. And there was a divorce lawyer in the chapter, and he said, I do divorces. Nobody likes the topic, right? I mean, what do I say that gets people's attention? And one of the members who had hired him to help with her divorce said to him, are you kidding, Frank? You helped me be able to sleep at night because you were on the job. I could release all the
Mm,
anxiety that I had and the sleep that I was losing because I knew you were in my corner.
mm.
And he was like, I would have never thought to say that. So you have to talk.
That's
It is
profound.
profound. And you got to talk to your clients about what was life like after I did what I did for you. And that becomes your pitch, part of your pitch, or at least the description after you do the elevator pitch. And it's all about the afters. What are things going to look like after you do what you do?
That is, I love that, and especially for what we do. I mean, we help, like I said, we buy, sell, fix, grow companies, but we help business owners retire rich.
Yeah.
So we, more than anybody, can really focus on that after, and we do. But it's so funny because some people, business owners, will come back and say, "I shouldn't have sold my business. I hate retirement. Now I'm bored." But the afters is so important to focus on in your messaging and marketing.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So we have a question from Kenny, and Kenny says, "What's the key to following up with your network, and how often?"
So it's a great question. Touch points are really important, and you should have more touch points with the people that you're at profitability with, and then maybe a little less with the people that you're at credibility with, because you want to move that to profitability. But the people that you're at profitability with, you want to stay in touch with them fairly regularly, either phone calls, meeting, try and stay in the same network so you're connecting with them regularly, because nothing kills a networking relationship faster than benign neglect.
Mm.
Where you just kind of lose touch with each other, and the relationship.
And we're all guilty of
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely. And
I don't know if you are, Ivan, but I know I
no,
am.
we all are. And so the people who are helping you the most are the ones that you want to stay in contact with regularly. But let's say, let's take it a step further back and say we're talking about you meet somebody new for the first time. How do you follow up with that person? In several of my books, I talk about the 24/7/30 follow-up system. In Networking Like a Pro second edition, Networking Like a Pro second edition, I have this all in writing. Within 24 hours after you meet somebody, you should reach out to them by email, or do something really crazy, send them a card. Nobody sends anything through the mail anymore. You really want to stand out, do a card. And you reach out to them within 24 hours, and don't sell to them. Do
Mhm.
not sell to them. Instead, you say, "Hey, it was really nice meeting you. I enjoyed our conversation on XYZ, and I hope our paths cross again." Whatever, something like that. Within 7 days, connect with them on social media. So one of the things you want to do when you're having a conversation with somebody you don't know is find out, where are you most active? By the way, I'm most active on Facebook. I have 215,000 followers on my public Facebook page. So go to my public Facebook page if you're interested in following the kinds of things that I do. And what I do on my Facebook page, it's called Jab, 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 Punch. That is educate, 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 then promote a book or promote something. But it's mostly education. So it's jab, 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 punch. And that's what I think you should do with.
Jab, 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 jab,
Yeah,
punch.
there's a book by that title. And so it's about educating first and foremost. And that's what I do with my social media. So I tell people that's where I'm at. And I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and all of the other sites, but that's where I probably do most of my stuff. Anyway, you find out where they like to be. Now, I learned this from my kids, okay? Because when they were young, my oldest is 36 now. When they were young, I remember I would call my eldest daughter, and she wouldn't answer the phone, and then I texted her, and she'd like respond by text right away. And I'm like, "Hey, this device, you can put it up to your ear and you can actually have a conversation." She says, "I know, Dad." So, but it was texting was it. Then with my next daughter, I would call her nothing. I would text her nothing. And I asked my late wife. I said, "What do we do?" She's not responding to phone calls or texts. She said, "Oh, you have to." No, this is a long time ago. She's 31 now. She was like 16, 17. She said, "Oh, you have to WhatsApp her." I said, "What's WhatsApp? I don't even know what that is." And so I downloaded WhatsApp, and I tested it. I called her nothing. I texted nothing. Then I messaged her on WhatsApp. She responded immediately. It's like, okay, I got this figured. Then came my son.
That's funny.
My son, he wouldn't answer a call. He wouldn't text. He didn't like WhatsApp, but he was a gamer. He played games. And one of the games, many of the games that he liked, he would download from an online platform called Steam. And Steam has these games that you can download, and they have an instant messaging feature. And I particularly use this when I travel, and I just wanted to connect with my kids. And so I downloaded Steam, and I bought a game so that I could have instant messaging. And I tried the same thing. I called him nothing, texted him nothing, but I messaged him on Steam, and he was like, "What, Dad? What do you want?" It's like, "Hey, I got you." So I learned from my kids, you got to go.
And I'm sure you told them, "Please answer your phone. Please text me back. Please
Yeah,
do
no, they
this,"
wouldn't do it.
right?
So
They wouldn't do
no,
it.
but the key is I figured out if I wanted to stay in touch with them as their dad, especially when I traveled, I had to go where they wanted to be, not where I wanted to be, but where they wanted to be. And that was a lesson for me in networking because if you find out where the person likes, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Twitter, it might whatever, connect with them there. If you
Yeah,
want to really connect with them there, and then start a dialogue. Comment on their posts. You know, interact with them in some way.
that can be very time consuming. Obviously worth it. You have to
Yeah, it
do it.
can be, or you could spend a lot of money advertising, and which, oh, by the way, takes time to make
Well,
sales.
I was thinking, what I was thinking, not advertising. What I was thinking is, you got to have an assistant. If you don't have an assistant, you are the
Yeah,
assistant.
maybe,
So,
but that's part of your marketing. I mean,
yeah, it's part of your
sales takes time.
and yeah,
Networking takes time,
take time.
but you're building a relationship, and you're farming. So when you get somebody who's a referral partner, it's not one and done. It's they will refer multiple people to you over time. You could
That's
be
right.
getting business while you're on vacation because they're referring people to your office. So
Yeah.
it's a very effective way to build your business. And I learned that you go where they are. That's the 24. Go where they are and connect with them. And then 24, 7:30, within 30 days, and don't sell to them online either. But within
It was 24,
24,
say it again,
7:30. So within 24 hours,
24, 7.
email them, send them a card, something. Within 7 days, connect with them on social media. Within 30 days, meet them. Preferably in person, but Zoom now is pretty common. So you can meet on Zoom, but do a one-to-one. And so you reach out to them and say, hey, we met a month ago at the BNI meeting or at the Chamber of Commerce. And we remind them who you are. We talked about whatever. And I been following some of the stuff you posted on the internet. I love this topic. That was a great topic. I'd love to get together and learn more about what you do. And
Mhm.
maybe you can learn a little bit about what I do. Just tell them I want to do a one-to-one. So you get together with them. And again, don't sell to them. It's like a sales seizure. People just can't help themselves and they sell. No, what you want to do is you're farming, you're building a relationship. And so that's the beginning of a relationship. So the follow up with a new person is 24, 7:30. That makes sense?
Wow. Yes, and I would like somebody on my team to put that in the comments because that's huge, huge. So it was 7, 24, and 30.
24, within 24 hours, reach out to them.
Yep.
Within 7 days, connect with them on social media. Within 30 days, see if you can do a one-to-one.
That's what I wanted in my notes, in the comments. And so we have another question. Let's kind of transition a little bit into marketing. So Matt asked about small businesses often face. No, I don't want to ask that question yet. Okay. Marketing is crucial as a crucial component of business success, but if I can also be but it can also be very expensive and time consuming. What are some low cost, high impact marketing strategies that entrepreneurs can use to reach their target audience?
Well, look, networking is the lowest cost marketing you can possibly do, but it does take time. So all marketing is going to take time or money. It's going to be one or the other. And networking, referral marketing is a little more time intensive, but very inexpensive. A quarter page ad in a newspaper is going to cost thousands and thousands. You can have a 1-year membership for a chamber or a 1-year membership in BNI for less than a quarter page ad in a newspaper. So
Mhm.
it's going to take time
And
or
it spreads
money.
like wildfire, right? Because they tell you connect with somebody in BNI, they tell somebody who tells
Yeah,
somebody, and
it
before
is a
you know
force multiplier. Absolutely. And people, they say, "Well, I don't have the time." Buck up, Buttercup. This is business.
it.
You know, you,
Well, I always say if you don't have the time, you can also have an assistant help you as well.
yeah, but yes, absolutely. And I couldn't run my life without people who have helped me. But in the early days, it was just me. It was just me.
Yeah.
And you're working long hours, and if you want to build relationships, it's going to take a little bit of time. One of the books I wrote was about the difference between men and women and how they network, and we surveyed 12,000 people, and we found that the average amount of time that people spent networking was
Hmm.
6.5 hours a week. Now, that was going to networking meetings, making phone calls to follow up with people, have conversations, doing one to one meetings, writing thank you cards. All of that was part of the networking process. Took the average for 12,000 people, took 6.5 hours. And so one of the things people are like, oh, okay, 6.5 hours, not bad. But one of the things I'd say to people is, how many of you out there want to be average? Don't you want to be above average? And we found that the people who really generated more than half of their business through networking and referrals, spent about 8 hours a week. So about one day a week, spread out over the 5 days, generated the majority of their business through referrals. And that was based on a survey of 12,000 people all over the world, not just BNI members. It was open to the public.
Wow. So you are definitely the king of networking, Ivan.
Thanks. I earned all this
It-
gray hair.
and so I followed. Well, you're really good. You're doing good. You still got all your hair.
Yes, yeah, I'm just so happy I have hair. There's no question about that.
And so I've heard different things, and I've followed different things before, and I've got a pretty great network as well. But like I just to get started, too, like obviously join BNI. Everybody should be a BNI member, but also identify who's the top 10 people you want to contact this week.
Yeah.
And start with a list because sometimes it can be overwhelming. So you can start to say, okay, I want to contact these 5 people this month, and here's or this week I want to contact 5 people. Here's my objective. Here's how I think I can add a huge value to them
Right.
because you really need to add a huge value to them before you expect to sell, or like you said, go into a sales seizure and expect something from them.
Yeah. Well, listen,
And
if you're
then
at credibility with people, it's easy to get
yeah,
those names, or much easier to get those names.
right.
If you're, but what happens is people try to jump over visibility, jump over credibility, and get right to profitability. Which, by the way, in one of my books we called premature solicitation, which you don't want to say fast 3 times; it'll get you in trouble. So,
We should put that in the comments.
premature
Premature
solicitation. Yeah,
solicitation. Don't say it fast three
yeah.
times.
Don't say it fast 3 times; you'll get in trouble. Um, So if you're at credibility, you can do that. And I'll tell you the true story, absolutely true story. In LA years ago, I was in a chapter and we were talking about being laser specific about who you wanted to meet. And think big, don't think small. Who is it? I mean, reasonable. I want to meet, President Biden. Okay, uh, bring it down a little, but you get laser specific. So don't say, for example, one person said, "I want to meet the manager of the Hyatt Hotel." Okay, well, who's the manager? What's his name or her
Yeah.
name? You know, what Hyatt? There's a bunch of Hyatts. So give the exact Hyatt, give the exact name. And if you don't know who you want to meet, then people aren't going to find that person.
And it's also kind of law of attraction too,
No, it is.
right?
Now let me tell you
think
the
I
true
think
story. This one person says, "I want to meet so and so." They were the number one real estate agent in Southern California. No, they were the number one real estate agent in the United States. They happen to be in Southern California. Number one real estate agent for this real estate firm for 8 out of the last 10 years. They were a major real estate person. They said, "I've been trying to meet her for years and I can't get past the assistant. I just can't get past the assistant. Does anyone know someone who might know her?" One of the members raises her hand. She said, "Yeah." She said, "Sally, that's my sister-in-law." And of course, Sally was like, "Oh my goodness, why didn't you ever tell me that?" And of course, the woman said, "You never
I never
asked."
asked.
And so when you're at credibility with people, you be laser specific about who you're looking for. You'll be shocked. I have been shocked at who's known people um, in this exercise when I've done it around the world. It's just incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, and I agree with that. And when I do my list, it's list of friends I've developed, well, acquaintances who I've spoken on stage with.
Yeah.
I've met at all these different events, and I've had them on my podcast and things like that. But you're right; you don't want to have this huge target that you want to go out and meet. Um, President Biden or Oprah. Oprah is on my list. But there's always third degree of
Yeah.
separation. Uh, Kenny asks, "What's your advice for new business to effectively network? Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, business associations, since masterminds can be expensive."
So one of the things that I've talked about in multiple books is the importance of diversifying your networks, to participate in a few different kinds of networks, but they should be different kinds of networks. Just like a good financial planner would say, diversify your financial portfolio. Don't invest everything in the stock market, or don't invest everything in real estate. Diversify your portfolio. You should do the same thing with networking. And Kenny, you got it right. I mean, you just named multiple kinds of groups. I think the Chamber of Commerce is great. And it surprises people to hear the founder of BNI say, go join the Chamber of Commerce. But I think you should, because the Chamber of Commerce gives you a lot of visibility. Chambers have events with lots of people. You mix, you mingle, you meet people. Chambers are a great networking organization to participate in. I think I'm a past Rotarian. I was in Rotary for 16 years. I highly recommend Rotary Alliance Kiwanis. They're great service clubs, service organizations. BNI, obviously, I recommend. BNI is a strong contact network, allows one person per profession, very focused. I mean, we are very, very focused on getting together to pass each other referrals. So each one has a different niche. And when you participate in multiple ones, then you really got yourself covered well. Don't join two chambers. Don't join Rotary and Kiwanis. Don't join, well, you can't join two BNI groups. We don't let you. Join a group like BNI. And now you've diversified.
Visit the BNI groups, because I've done that. You can visit the different
You
chapters.
can visit, yeah, even as a member, you can go visit a group. So, when you build a powerful personal network and you start making money, you can afford the mastermind groups. The mastermind groups are affordable. And there are some business coaches, local business coaches have small mastermind groups that are affordable early on. The bigger ones, are a little more expensive. The ones that have been around a long time, but
Yeah, I know. Like there's Vistage as well, and you got to look at what masterminds good for you. I know Vistage is larger
Vistage is
businesses,
great.
and they're for larger businesses, more working with you on your business as
Yeah.
well. It is a referral network, but I think it's more like helping those businesses.
Well, I was in a
Really,
group that was competitive to
yeah.
Vistage, and there really wasn't many referrals that were done. But what was done was a lot of discussing on how to work on your business. The management issues, HR issues, finance issues, funding issues. You're basically talking to peers who are not competitors, and you're having conversations about how you handle problems, being the CEO of a business. And so I found it was Executive Renaissance Forum that I was a member of, that's like Vistage. And I found that, but it was very expensive. So,
Yes, it is expensive,
work your
but
way up to that.
there's some masterminds that are less
Yeah.
expensive, especially if you get in early on. Like I joined a mastermind in Florida that meets once a quarter, and I got in for a much lower price, and I got a return on my investment really quickly. And that's another thing, is not so much looking at the investment, but looking at what you can get out of that investment. Because let's say it costs you $10,000, but you can return on that investment within maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe sooner, or maybe a little bit longer. You have to look and see what can you get out of that, because a lot of people say you can't afford something. We'll always say, well, you can't afford not to. So
I agree completely. I think Benjamin Franklin got it right when he said, when you empty your purse into your head, you have something that no one can ever take away from you, and that's knowledge. And the knowledge is power. And, you work your way to it. Don't spend 30,000 on a program if you don't have it. Don't put it on a credit card that you can't pay off, but you work your way up to it. There are programs that, and look, let's say you can't afford anything. That's why God made YouTube. There's so much stuff. That's why we have podcasts like this, right? You want to exit rich, you come to this podcast. You listen to people talk. What's it cost? Oh, wait, nothing. So there's so much content.
I need to start charging. No.
Well, there's so much content that people can get. It doesn't cost anything. So start there. If you can't afford the mastermind, create your own by focusing on having virtual mentors. You're a
Yeah.
virtual mentor. You're not sitting face to face with people, but people are coming to this and they're learning about business from you with many different guests. That's a
Yeah.
form of mastermind.
Absolutely. And there's other online I mean, there's lots of online masterminds. Like you have Clubhouse, right? I don't know if Clubhouse is still
Yeah,
around, but
Clubhouse is still around. Of
well,
course, it did
I
great during
still have a lot
COVID.
of books of Exit Rich on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty good networking. And there's a lot of masterminds that will also work out a payment arrangement,
That do what?
work out
Yeah.
payments. They'll have a payment
Yeah.
schedule. So you don't have to pay all up
No,
front.
not with all of them. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about any other questions on networking. I'm trying to scroll through these
Oh, there's a question here
questions.
about the pandemic.
Yeah, we can talk about that. That's from Stefan. And many businesses struggled during the pandemic while others thrived.
Yeah. Well,
What we've done and the key factors. Yeah. So what was why did some thrive? Why did some survive? Now I have my own answers to that, but I'm gonna let you answer it.
I think people get frozen by fear or focused by fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you go back to our opening discussion. I could have been frozen by fear when I lost my big client and just bought a new home. And I was frozen for a week, and I threw myself a pity party, and then it was like, okay, this isn't getting me anywhere. I got to focus. How do I get most of my business? And then I got focused. So I get it where you get frozen for a little bit, but you got to get past that and get focused by the fear you may have. And what I saw during COVID was I saw business people get focused. And I'm happy to say that our organization, we turned on a dime. I wrote an article for Entrepreneur that said the future, and I wrote this in 2018. The future of face-to-face is online. And my organization went crazy. It was like, really? The old man's losing it. This is not going to be online. And
Oh man, losing
he's
it.
losing it. And now I didn't see COVID coming, but I saw the technology advancing. And so to me, it was really clear holographic imaging, 3D technology, metaverse that we're going to be doing more and more online. Then COVID hit, and we were ready. We transitioned the entire world, almost 10,000 chapters from January to March. In those 3 months, we transitioned 10,000 chapters from a weekly in-person meeting to a weekly online meeting. It was amazing. Now, though, and a lot of my messaging back then was, look, these are tough times. These are very difficult times, but hope is more powerful than fear. Hope plus a plan plus action will win every day. And so I got people to focus rather than be frozen. So I had BNI members. This is one of the best stories during COVID. I had BNI members doing one-to-ones, just like you and I are talking right now. They're on Zoom or Skype, and they're having a conversation. They're doing one-to-one. And one member said to another, they were in Northern California, and one member said, "You have a furniture reupholstery business." They knew each other, and he said, "You probably have a lot of cloth." She said, "I literally have tons of cloth, upholstery cloth, in my warehouse." And he said to her, "Have you ever thought?" Now this was March of 2020. He said, "Have you ever thought of maybe making COVID masks?" Now, if you think back to March of 2020, the world ran out of masks.
Mhm.
And she had to let go of all of her employees. They were all laid off because it wasn't a necessary business, furniture reupholstery. She said, "I have tons." He said, "Have you ever thought about making masks?" And she said, "I hadn't thought about that." So she went into her warehouse. She made 100 masks. And she gave 50 of them to people, too. She said, "One is for you. And would you take the other and give it to a nurse, a doctor, a senior center, a hospital, with my business card, and tell them I can manufacture masks immediately. They can have them in just a few days." And she was overwhelmed with orders for masks. She was able to hire back every one of her employees. She physically distanced them in the plant, and they started becoming a mask manufacturing business. That's the way you get focused by fear. as opposed to
Yeah.
frozen by fear.
And sometimes, I always say when you're in a fog, it's foggy. When you're in a fog, it's foggy. Sometimes you need, many times, all the time, you need an outsider's perspective to see what you're clearly not
Yeah,
seeing.
exactly. And that's what happened with her. Same thing happened
Yep.
in Australia with a brewery who, he didn't sell his beer to restaurant. I mean, he didn't. He sold them to restaurants and bars. He didn't sell them to grocery stores or whatever. So he had no business. All the restaurants and bars were closed. And somebody said to him, "Well, you have a lot of alcohol." He said, "Yeah, I got vats of alcohol." He said, well, "Have you thought about being a COVID hand sanitizer business?" It saved his company. He
Oh my
he transitioned
gosh.
into doing hand sanitizer, which of course nobody had hand sanitizer because
That's
yeah. So
amazing.
that's what I mean when I say we all have difficult times. What you want to do is try to get focused during those difficult times, not frozen by it.
Absolutely. Because, a lot of people like, okay, I want to go network. I want to get business out of this. I want to, get an ROI out of this. But sometimes the best thing you can get out of masterminds or BNI or any of those groups is the
This is advice,
advice
yeah.
and those questions. It's kind of like, Amazon did this way back when. And if you ever watched the movie The Founder, did you watch the
I
movie The
did
Founder
about
with
McDonald's.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's everybody should ask, what business am I
yeah,
in? And if you remember correctly, in the founder, he was over leveraged, so he was trying to borrow money. And a gentleman followed him out of the bank. He said, "What business are you in?" He says, "I'm in the restaurant business." He says, "No, you're not. No, you're not." He goes, "Yes, I'm in the restaurant business." He goes, "You're in the real estate
yeah,
business. You need to buy the real estate, lease it back to the franchisees. When they're not compliant, then you void the contract, the franchise agreement, and you evict them from the location. You put another franchisee in, which gave him the leverage to really take McDonald's from the McDonald's brothers. So everybody should ask themselves, what business am I in? What's my superpower? And what business should I be in?
yep, yep.
And what business should I be in for the time that we're in, for the economy that we're in, for the time that we're in?
Yeah, because listen, disruption is here to stay. We are going to continue to be disrupted, and it's not something new. I mean, disruption has been going on for many, many, many decades. Do you know Kodak? Kodak invented the digital camera in the 70s. They invented the digital camera. They had the patent on the digital camera. They didn't want to mess with their film processing business. So they licensed the digital technology to other companies. There is actually an email from an executive at Kodak who said, besides, who's going to ever look at photographs on a computer? Kodak, when you think about it, Kodak could have become Apple. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, how big of a jump is it from film processing to taking photos with a camera? It's no bigger a jump than having a computer and going into phones.
Right.
It's a similar jump. Kodak
Oh my
could have
gosh.
been Apple.
And what year was
It was in
that?
the 70s.
Well, Xerox, kind of same story with
Yep.
Xerox with the mouse here,
Yep.
right? Remember the mouse in the Xerox story?
Yeah. They didn't hold a patent. They didn't hold that tight. That was unfortunate. But
Well, and they also said, well, we don't really see the value in this. Do you remember
yeah.
that? Because I used to work for
Yeah,
Xerox,
well,
so
they
I
let
know.
they let Steve Jobs go through their research center, and he saw that and he's like, "That is a game changer." Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And that's a big thing. And, it is a reason why I've been, because I keep up with the stats. It used to be 98% of all startups would fail in the first 5 years,
yeah,
right? All startups would fail. Now it's not startups failing. Only 30% of startups are failing. It's the business owners that have been in business for 10 years or longer. Those business owners, 70% of them are going out of business because of what I call lack of aim. Aim is always innovate and market.
yeah,
Always innovate and market. And so that's huge. And that's what Kodak didn't do. That's what Xerox didn't do.
yeah. And Sears is another one. Sears is
Yep.
huge. Sears in you may be too young to remember this, but do you remember the Sears catalog?
I thank you for the
You're welcome.
compliment.
That's how I stayed married 31 years. Um, So the Sears catalog, for those of you millennials out there, it was a book. I mean, thick catalog, and it would get mailed. I think it was like quarterly to people's homes who subscribed to it. and it had like everything you could imagine in the Sears catalog. And so you could look through the Sears catalog and you could order mail order, or you could go down to this, you could order mail order and pick it up at the store. You could do whatever. And so in 1993, Michelle, 1993, Sears closed the Sears catalog because they said the catalog business was dead. Amazon opened their doors in 1994. Had Sears said, you know, this internet thing, we might really take a good look at transitioning from this printed document to online. Sears could have been Amazon, but they got
Wow.
disrupted because the catalog business, the printed catalog business was dead. So the message here to everyone is keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah.
Try to be,
And not just in your own industry,
yeah,
but
try
all
to be
around.
ahead of the curve or at least with the curve. So, you know,
Yeah.
BNI is an in-person networking organization, although 34% of our organization now meets online or hybrid, sometimes in person, sometimes online. But we have always tried to be forward thinking. You can't own a three-letter domain, bni.com, if you weren't an early adopter to technology.
I know, I've been trying.
Yeah, you got to be an early adopter.
Absolutely. That brings me to another question. And I know we might be running out of time, and I want to talk about your book. But small businesses often face unique challenges such as limited resources, competition from larger companies. What advice would you give to small business owners looking to grow and succeed in today's market? I think that you've touched on some of
Well, one
this
of the things that
already.
small business has an advantage of is they can change quickly. You know, the larger the business, it's like turning a battleship. It takes miles. You know, you can't turn a battleship around in yards. It's miles. And but a small business can turn on a dime. And so that's one of the advantages that entrepreneurs have is that they can adjust quickly. Here's a disadvantage though that small entrepreneurs have is they have a tendency to chase bright shiny objects too much. They don't get focused enough. And one of the things I
Guilty. Squirrel, squirrel,
yeah, squirrel,
squirrel.
squirrel, squirrel. I mean, I keep this in my desk drawer because I talk about this subject a lot. It's like they're constantly chasing bright. Oh, look at that! Let's go do this. Let's go do that. You want to be
You got to be
successful.
very careful when the CEO and you have another person in your business that is just like that.
Yeah, well, and the founder is the one that tends to be chasing the bright shiny object, so you have to be careful. But one of the things I learned years ago is if you want to be successful in business, you have to do six things 1,000 times, not a
Mhm.
thousand things six times. And
Six things a
yeah,
thousand
you got to do
times.
six things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things six times. And all too often, entrepreneurs are constantly, you know, chasing the squirrel, chasing the bright shiny object. They're doing 1,000 things six times, and they can't figure out why they're not able to scale. You scale when you get a system down and you work it and work it and work it, and you keep an open mind as to where the marketplace is going and what's happening with technology, and you transition into that. But you should always try to transition in a way that still makes sense for your business.
What's the best? Give me like 2 to 3 tips on scaling because so many companies, always preach and teach build a sustainable, scalable, sellable company.
Yeah, well,
What's
the
the
first
secret
thing
to
is
scaling?
you have to create systems, and they have to be replicable, and you have to write them down. So you write everything down that you are doing. So you create systems, you write them down. I think another really important one is education. I think one of the things McDonald's also talked about is in addition to being a real estate business in many ways, they're also the largest training company in the world.
Hmm.
And people think McDonald's isn't a training company. Well, they kind of
And I think
are.
Xerox was one of the
Yes,
largest
they
training
were.
companies.
Xerox was great at it, and McDonald's is great at it. They have McDonald's U. And so one of the things you write systems down, and then when you train, you train to stop the leaky bucket syndrome. So consistency in training uh, reduces the leaky bucket process. And the leaky bucket process is if you train me how to do something, without manuals, without a system and a process, but you train me. And then I train somebody else. When you train me, some information leaks out. When I train somebody else, information leaks out. And by the time we're at the third or fourth generation, it's something completely different. It's a telephone game. So
Yeah.
processes and systems help to reduce the leaky bucket syndrome. And that's one of the things that you want to do to scale a business. You also have to learn how to delegate. And people talk about delegation, but here's a piece that I've never heard people talk about. When you delegate, you must delegate two things. You delegate responsibility and authority. And it's the second
Responsibility and what?
authority. Authority.
Authority.
Yes. So now look, you can't delegate 100% authority to a learner. So you hire somebody, you give them responsibility. Well, what we tend to do is give responsibility and not authority. Then they get in trouble when they do something. So they're constantly coming back to you and saying, what do I do now, boss? What do I do now, boss? Because you've not given them the authority to do whatever it is that they have to
They
do.
make huge mistakes and really.
Well, but you give them, so a learner, maybe you give them 50% authority. You say, okay, this is your job. Come see me for this. Okay. Then over time, you give them 60, 70, 80, 90. You should give your employees up to 95% authority within their field.
Yeah, within stages.
Within
huh?
stages, not overnight.
No,
Yeah, because that's
no,
a recipe for disaster. So you over time you give them authority. And for me, I would give my employees authority in everything except there were two pieces. One was a certain amount of money, and that varied depending on the position. So, depending on the position, if you hit this dollar amount, you got to come see me or you got to go see your boss. And the second was legal. if somebody's talking about attorneys, okay, you got to see me. So that was it. Otherwise, they'd have total authority. And I remember one person once made a $10,000 mistake. And this was years ago. It was like, that was a lot of money for me, a lot. And I called her in and she said, are you going to fire me? And I said, she had the authority to do it. She did it. It was a bad decision. I said to her, what would you do if it happened again? And she gave me a good answer. She said, I would have done this instead of that. And I can't believe I did this. And
So it's a great learning.
yeah.
experience.
And I said, okay, no, I'm not going to fire you. And she said, why? I said, because I just invested $10,000 in your education. And she was so happy. And I felt like, look, I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes that were bigger than that. So the key was did she do it because she wasn't focused, that it was carelessness? No, she just made a bad decision.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was education. It was tuition. So, sometimes don't worry about whether people are going to make mistakes. They will.
They will.
And if,
I had somebody make a $50,000 mistake, a little bit over 50, and kind of same thing. And then it's kind of same thing.
yeah,
You're gonna let me go. You're gonna fire me. You're gonna take out my commissions. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna beat you up anymore than you're already gonna beat up yourself. But what did you learn from this? What are you gonna do differently? How are you gonna
yeah.
help this?
Now,
people
on the
come
other hand, there were people who made much smaller mistakes, but it was just based on carelessness. And them, no problem. Let them go. I've lost more sleep over people that I've kept than people I've fired. And I lose sleep.
Amen.
I've lost sleep over firing people, but I have lost more sleep over people I've kept than people I've fired.
Amen. Yeah, they say slow to hire, quick to
Yep.
fire. And so let's change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about AI. AI is increasingly shaping the way we live and work. In fact, we're getting ready to build out a huge AI platform in our company. But in your opinion, how do you see AI changing the business landscape in the coming years, and what opportunities and challenges does this present for entrepreneurs? And then I'll have a follow-up question from Mitch on this
Yeah.
one.
So I'm still wrapping my head around how AI is going to affect networking. And I don't have a good answer about that, but I can tell you there.
Well, that was another big question. Is how did networking change when you got LinkedIn and you got social media and you got all that other stuff? But
All
let's focus
that
on
has
AI.
made
So,
B&I grow. It's just another way. It's their touch points. So I used to get in the 90s when the internet was really getting bigger. people were saying the internet's going to close down BNI. And in our first 11 years of BNI, from 1985 to 1996, we opened 500 groups. Then the internet, of course, started around 95 or so, 94. So in the next 11 years, from 1996 to 2007, we opened 5,000 chapters. So people, it was usually the media. I would say, yeah, the internet has had a big impact on BNI. We went from 500 in 11 years to 5,000. What's that?
Yeah. In a good positive
In a
way.
positive way, yeah. So you look for the opportunities, and for us, it was touch points. It was a way of building the brand, connecting with our members, connecting with the public. So AI, I'm not sure what businesses it's going to create. I need to wrap my head around that. But I can tell you what some businesses that are in trouble. Developmental editors for books. If I want to flesh out a concept, I can get on ChatGPT and ask a question, and it could just give me an unbelievable answer to flesh out concepts that I want.
You can write a book now, I think.
You can. I don't think I would, because it seems a little like you're cheating a bit, but you can, and I'm sure people will. There are websites, by the way. I think it's one is AI or Human. I think that's the site. But you can just do a Google search, and you can punch in to the website. It's free. An article that somebody wrote, and you can ask, is this AI or is it human? And it is unbelievably accurate. I have punched in an AI article that I wanted to see. I think I did it on like quantum physics. I punched it in, and then I punched in one of my articles that I wrote, and it said, this is human. And the quantum physics, it said, this is AI. It was like 98% probability it's AI. And it was. So there are websites to determine whether you got AI or not. But let me tell you the other two professions that I think are in trouble. First and foremost, legal research. I think legal research, if you're in legal research, you better start looking to ramp up, to level up, because artificial intelligence will be able to do that job and maybe do it better. And the one that'll take longer, but will happen, physician's assistants. I was talking to, I have a guest who's here, and I was talking to her about this, and she's like, no, the physician's assistant is not going to be replaced. I said, really? Let's see. So I said, let's ask it about Lyme disease. And so I type in into ChatGPT, what is the diagnosis for handling Lyme disease in the early stages? First thing it said was, ChatGPT cannot be used for medical purposes. That said, and then it gave me this long answer, and it was right on the money. And I know it was right on the money because I was once bit by a tick with Lyme, and I had the bullseye, and it said everything that you needed to look for. So I think that professions that involve not original research, but researching existing information, they're in trouble.
Yeah. So we got legal, we got physician assistants. What other industry?
I mean, you could take almost any research position in a company. I used to work for a transportation company. There was a whole R&D department that would do research on transportation. I think departments like that will just disappear unless they're doing original research. So the original research is going to be okay. I mean, where you do surveys and you create your own database, they're going to be okay. So I think positions will probably be created to do original research, but positions that are researching existing data are going to be a thing of the past in the not too distant future.
Wow. Somebody can add that to the comments. I think that would be good too for future. When people go back and look at this, add that to the comments. Anything research related. Also, I see a comment from my team: when you delegate responsibility and authority, but they left off the second biggest part, which is in stages.
In stages, yeah.
We don't want entrepreneurs. Look, it's happened to me in my own business, delegating and giving authority and responsibility too soon without the right measurements, without the right, checks and balances in place. So you want to do it in stages.
Right.
I do want to uh, another question that a question that Mitch had was, how is this going to impact the economy? Because everybody's talking about job loss, job loss. You know, you go into banks, you don't have as many tellers. You go to fast food, you have machines. You know, you go to restaurants now, you order from a kiosk. How is this going to affect the
Well,
economy?
look, there will be job losses, but there'll also be job creation. And I mean, in my lifetime, I'm in my 60s. In my lifetime, I can't tell you how many times I've heard naysayers talk about technology and job loss, and that we're going to lose all kinds of positions. That's true. And we're also going to create positions. What are those positions? Not sure yet. I mean, original research, I think will create more positions in that. But uh, and,
We'll
and
create more positions and what?
in
And
doing
what was
original research versus researching existing data. So there'll be more of
gotcha.
that. There are likely to be more programmers, more computer technology people, because running these is going to take more and more work. So, there are fields that will expand. There'll be fields that we don't know of that will be created. Um,
Hmm.
and there will be jobs lost. But you look
Hmm.
back, newspapers said that radio would put them out of business.
Hmm.
Radio said that television would put them out of business. Television said the internet might, and it might, but newspapers are finally, after more than centuries, the internet's probably hurt newspapers and magazines, but it wasn't radio that put newspapers out of business. So we always look at humans, just look at we go to the negative.
Yeah.
We immediately get frozen by fear. Oh, we're going to lose jobs. Yes, we will. What jobs are going to be created? And if you are smart, you're going to be looking at the opportunities that
Hmm.
that will evolve. So here's a ChatGPT. Here's something I've used it for. Saved me a boatload of time. I am working on a survey for a book called Garage to Global. How do you scale your business? How do you take it out of your garage and make it a global enterprise? I needed to come up with 50 questions.
And they give it to me to sell.
All right, I will. I needed 50 questions. And usually when I do a survey, I write the survey, I hand it to a few people, they give me feedback, and then I give it to a few more people, they give me feedback, and then I do a test survey and I get that and I make changes. And that whole process can take 3 months to do a really good survey. I did it in 1 hour. I got on
Wow.
ChatGPT and I said, give me the top 10 factors in scaling a business for finance, for organizational culture, for HR. And I picked these topics, and it gave me long answers. And I said, okay, now take those 50 questions and cut them down to a few words each to be included in a survey. It took all 50 and basically created a survey for me. And I'm now going to take that survey. I will test the survey just to make sure nothing was missing, but that'll take a week. So what would normally take 3 months, I did in an hour. I'll test it for a week, and then the survey is going to go up. So there are legitimate, effective uses of something like ChatGPT. Creating a
Yeah.
survey to me was one of them.
There's one thing that it won't do though, is on it. We went on it today and asked, what question has Ivan never been asked?
Did you ask it that? What did it say?
We did. And so an AI expert in my office said, well, I think he went and pulled a bunch of great questions, but he came back and said, I can't do that. I can't do that. But I thought it would be really
Yeah.
cool to get a question, to ask you that's never been asked to you before. Because I know you've done thousands of interviews and spoke on stage, etc. And so, yeah, so it won't do that. But here's the bottom line, it goes back to what I said before. Do you want, if you want to build sustainable, scalable, and exit rich one day, you can't do the same thing. Doing the same thing is a definition of insanity,
Yeah.
right? So why do people go out of business? Lack of aim.
Well, I
Lack
think
of
I
aim.
think one of the things you do if you're going to be in business a long time is you have to reinvent yourself.
Innovation and marketing. Yeah, innovation and marketing. And so when people see AI, the writing on the wall, these business owners really have to get get with the program and start looking at it, look outside, throw the box away and say, how can I incorporate this into my business?
Yes.
And that's what we're doing in my business right now. And then the employees have to look at it and go, oh my gosh, what job should I be preparing for?
Yes.
What extra schooling, what extra education
Yes.
should I get so I can get, so I won't be in the line and not have unemployment line
Right.
and not have positions. And I think some of those lower level jobs are probably going to go first, in my
What's
opinion.
going to go first?
And some of those lower level
Yeah.
positions,
Yeah.
they're going to go first. So they really need to, companies need to maybe invest in some money as well, training their staff, training
Yeah. I mean,
their
it's like robotics and
yes,
factories.
yes,
Vehicles are made substantially by robots now. And even
yeah. We're gonna
grocery
have
stores, and there's not that many tellers. There are people that you go you self check out on most of them. So
yeah, and then I had to how my I had to, and then we have to get our kids to show us how to do some of this stuff.
yeah, that's for sure.
My 12-year-old was like, "I got it.
That's
Let
for
me
sure.
check out." All right, so let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see if we missed any. I want to respect your time too, Dr.
Yeah,
Mike.
I'm happy to take one more. I do need to take off in
Okay.
a couple minutes.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Why don't we ask about your most recent book coming out?
Yeah,
And your most recent book is called Who's in Your
yeah,
Room? I love that title, Who's in Your Room. Is a metaphor and a method for understanding how our relationships, past and present, impact our lives. And then, gosh, I started reading about this, and with the help of my team, putting some things together for me. It says, imagine that you live your entire life in one room. Inside are all the people with whom you have ever had a relationship. And it doesn't even have to be a deep
yeah,
relationship. It could be like a 1 week relationship. This room is um, it's huge. It's anyone who you let in will be in your room for the rest of your life. And neurologists report that as far as your brain is concerned, the metaphor is real. Memories and emotions continue to influence you for better or worse long after external cause and this has disappeared. So who do you want in your room?
yeah.
Elaborate on this book. It sounds fascinating
I
to
I
me.
I love working on this book, and it's actually the second edition that just came out. And so for those who are listening, the first edition is an orange cover book. It was a great book, but we took it from 15,000 words to 40,000 words. So we expanded it greatly. You can find it on Amazon or in bookstores. It's the blue cover. That's the second edition. And the idea is, in fact, that we all have these relationships. And one of the people I interviewed was Dr. Daniel Amen, who's this psychiatrist and neuroscientist. And he said that, look, when you have a relationship with somebody, personal or professional, their fingerprints are all over your brain. The good or bad experience that you had is part of your existence, and it's part of who you are. And so one of the things that we talk about is that you got to learn how to be, you have to have a doorkeeper, somebody who is, screening people that you let into your life. Now, the doorkeeper, we're not talking about like a real person. We're talking about your conscious and subconscious mind.
Mhm.
And so with your conscious and subconscious mind, you screen people out who are trying to get into your life. And in order to do that, you got to know your values. If you don't know your values, you don't know who to screen. So you got to know what the deal makers and deal breakers are. This is not the kind of person I want in my life. This is the kind of person I want in my life. Then you have another conscious and subconscious person called the concierge. Concierge is the person who's managing what's going on in your room, because sometimes you've let in people that maybe you shouldn't have let in, or sometimes
And you need to get them out.
no, you can't get them out. They're gonna, because here's the thing.
Oh my
Here's
gosh.
the room starts here and ends here. It's your mind, so that you'll never get them out. You can stick them in a box and put them up high, put them away, but
I've done that with several
they're,
people
they're,
lately.
yeah. So you have family members which you have no choice over, and how do you deal with them? And so we talk about things like we talk about the fact that somebody might be in your room, but their baggage has to stay out. And you learn how to deal with people who are in your room that maybe you shouldn't have let in, or their family members you had no choice over. Here's a true story. And this woman read the first edition, sent me an email with this story, and it's in the second edition of the book. She said she had a family member, I think it was a cousin, who would come to family gatherings. She said, we have big family. We'd have these family gatherings. And this cousin would come to the family gatherings. And at some point, almost every time, she would lob in some verbal hand grenade. And people would get mad and they'd start crying and they'd start yelling and people would leave and she would just upset people. And they talked to her and they told her, you can't do this, but she kept doing it. So the family got together without her. And this is in the second edition. And they said, okay, when she comes next time, whatever she says, whatever it is, no matter how offensive, whoever heard it, just turn to her and say, oh, okay. And turn back and continue your conversation. Don't react other than, oh, okay. And continue your conversation. So sure enough, next family gathering, boom, people all around looked at her and went, oh, okay. And they went back to the conversation. She stopped doing it because she wasn't getting the reaction that she, for whatever crazy reason, liked. And she even stopped coming to a lot of the family events. But when she came, she stopped throwing in the grenades because nobody would react. So somebody might be in your room, but their baggage has to stay out.
So that reaction was validation for
Yes.
her in some way, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And she was no longer getting it. And that really made a difference. So, I mean, we have lots of techniques and we have a whole thing in there about the balance and the secret to balance and a whole chapter on that.
Wow. Well, it sounds like a must read.
Yeah.
And
It's fun.
are we going for the New York Times on this one?
No, it was an Amazon bestseller. It made number one in self-help on Amazon. But no, we didn't do the New York Times on this one.
Are you so what's next for you? Like, are you doing consulting or anything like that?
No,
Or you
I
think
mostly do BNI. I think an entrepreneur is either working in their flame or working in their wax. And when they're in their flame, they're on fire. They're excited. They love what they're doing. They're passionate about it. You can hear it in their voice. You can see it in the way they behave. When they're working in their wax, it just takes all their energy away. You can hear that in their voice and you can see that in the way they behave. This is my flame. I love doing interviews, especially interviews like this. I mean, this is an hour and a half interview. You know how rare that is? Oftentimes they're like 3-minute interviews. So you can really go deep.
I am so fortunate. Bless you.
Yeah, well, no, my pleasure. So I love interviews. I love speaking to groups of people. So I do a lot of speaking engagements. I like writing. It's work. It's like bleeding from your fingertips sometimes. But
Yeah, that was how do you write 24 books?
oh yeah, I have co-authors who help.
28.
Yeah, I have co-authors and they come to me with ideas and it gets the juices going. So in a way, I have gone from being King Arthur, leading the charge, to being Colonel Sanders, where I'm the spokesperson for the business and I absolutely love it.
That's wonderful, wonderful. So one more question, and then we're gonna make sure you tell everyone where to get the book. How can they reach out to you? All right. So Stefan asks, is there a difference in networking strategy between an entry level professional opposed to a seasoned veteran in the industry? So an entry level position, kind of like Kenny was asking those questions earlier, versus somebody like me that's been in the industry for years, for decades.
Well, the quality and level of the people that are going to most likely be different. If you're entry level, you really need to be a sponge. You just need to meet people and just begin the process of making connections, but you really want to educate yourself. When I was in my 20s, I wrote, and it's on my blog. If you go to ivanmisner.com and you do a search on 40-year plan. When I was in my 20s, I wrote a 40-year plan. And I posted it when I turned 60, I posted it on the internet, my 40-year plan. And my 20s were my education years. Just be a sponge. Learn as much as possible. Now, I believe in lifelong learning, but the 20s were big time learning. My 30s were pick a lane. And I wrote this in my 20s. My 30s, I wanted to pick a lane, a professional lane, and work in that, whatever it was. My 40s, I wanted to really be start to achieve a level of success. The 50s, I wanted to be at the top of my game, whatever that was. And you can see it. Go look at 40-year plan, ivanmeisner.com. And then in my 60s, I wrote down that I wanted to be an elder statesman. I wanted to be out of the day to day, whatever it was I was doing, and I wanted to share my experiences with people, be the elder statesman, be the person that people ask questions of from my experience. And I got to tell you, having a vision of what you want in general terms, I was never really specific. I want to do this profession or whatever. It was in general terms. These are the things that I want my life to look like. Having that vision becomes the guideposts for who you are to become. And it's never too late to do that.
Hmm. It's never too late. So do you believe in the whole vision board thing?
Yeah, I've never done a vision board, but I've done goals every year, written goals. And my wife and so I would do personal goals, professional goals personally. And then my late wife and I did couples goals every year. We would sit down and we would do these couples goals as to where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do together, what our dream vacation home might look like. So we did, vision goal sheets, which were amazing. And I've looked back at some of them and it's like, oh my goodness, we nailed it. I mean, we just nailed it.
It's kind of like Jack Canfield. Was it Jack
Yeah.
Canfield? No, it wasn't Jack
The law of
Canfield. It was the
attraction,
guy.
Rhonda Byrne. Jack Canfield was
Yeah,
on
but
it.
there was a Ashcraft. What's his name? Ashcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in it, and he said, he was doing the vision board and all that stuff, and he ended up buying the exact same
Yeah.
house that he had a photo of or drew
Yeah,
out or
I'm very
vision.
familiar with it. I got bumped from the movie because of that story. I had a story about
I'm going to the
I
movie
did, yeah,
because of
but his
that.
story was a little
Oh,
better. His
bummer.
story was a little better, but I drove by a home when we were finally going to move out of the house that I started BNI in. I drove by a home and I pointed at it and I said, "That's my dream home. I'd love to have a house like that someday." And 3 months later, it was on the market, and 4 months later, I owned it.
Wow, that's impressive. They need to do another secret. They need to do a sequel to that.
She had planned on doing four. I mean, I met Rhonda. She had planned on doing, if I recall right, four. She was going to have one, the main one, and then she was going to do one on business, one on health, and one on love. And it did so well. She just wrote a book and
Good
didn't
for
do the
her. I
others.
mean, everybody should watch that.
It's a
Everybody
good
should
movie,
watch that.
Law of Attraction, Rhonda Byrne. And
Even though
Jack,
that my friend now, Ivan, is not in it, go watch it anyway.
yes, I ended up on the cutting room floor.
Oh no. But look, you have created enormous success in everything that you've done, everything that you touched. I know that you're inspiring. You've inspired so many people along the way. What's next for you?
I want to be in the elder statesman role still.
Okay.
I love what I'm doing. I'm passionate about it. I want to continue to write books. And honestly, one of the biggest goals that I wrote in my early 60s was it's time for me to enjoy life. And
Mm,
so I'm just doing stuff I love doing.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And we all need to be able to get to that. And I love that 4 year plan. So you've added so many golden nuggets, words of wisdoms, any last minute thoughts, and where can people buy your most recent book,
Yeah, we can get
Who
almost all my books on Amazon, and of course, many of them in bookstores. But Who's in Your Room is definitely available in bookstores and on Amazon. It's also available as audibles. Most of my books are audio, not all, but most.
and your voice?
No, one of them is in my voice.
I tried it. I did it one time, and I'm like, never again.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a painstaking
it's kind of
process.
brutal to do. Um,
It is brutal, and I'm like, you know what? Let the voiceovers do that. They're so much
yeah,
better
they
at it.
are. And I have a second book that'll be on audio pretty soon called Infinite Giving. It's been out for a while, but that one's partially in my voice along with my co-authors. So bni.com, go to Amazon for my books. And if you want a lot of free content, ivanmeisner.com. I've been blogging twice a week since 2007.
Wonderful. Any last minute golden nuggets?
Um, I think it's really important that whatever it is that you do, if you love what you do, if you do what you love, you'll love what you do. And so you've got to reinvent yourself over time. Like I said, I went from being King Arthur to Colonel Sanders. That was a conscious decision. I mean, I consciously focused on this is what I'm really passionate about, and I wanted to have like a 5-year plan to get there. And it took
Yeah, I
it,
mean, your 40-year plan reminds me of the movie King Richard,
yeah.
what he did with his daughter Serena, and oh my God, I don't want to just draw a blank on the two daughters in tennis. He mapped out that whole thing. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was that was my goal. It took me a little longer than 5 to get there, but I got there. And it,
But that was in your 40-year plan.
well, to be the elder statesman, yeah. So when I was in my 50s, it was like, okay, it's a few years away. I'm ready. And I thought maybe I could hit it before I hit 60. I didn't. Um, Actually, I did. It was probably about 58 that it started to really take place. About 58. It was
Okay,
2014 where I stepped down from running the company.
right. Well, now you're probably making even bigger impacts because you're speaking so much more and on more stages, I assume, and podcast. And we're very fortunate to have you on the Exit Rich podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and hope to come back someday.
And thank you for giving me so much time
My pleasure.
and giving our listeners so much value. You really have to go back. All my listeners, thank you for tuning in every Wednesday to the Exit Rich podcast. And this is an episode that I encourage all of you to go back and listen to over and over and over again because it is like drinking from a fire hose. Do you know my friend Jay
Yeah,
Abraham?
I know of him. I've never met.
Oh, talk about drinking from a fire hose, the two of you.
Yeah.
And so you got to go listen to Dr. Meisner over and over and over again. There's so many golden nuggets, so many tips, so many words of wisdom. And I also encourage all of you, all of my listeners, to share this podcast, share this message with all of your friends, with your community, with your network, and get the message out there. And always, continue to tune in. Give us your questions, your comments, much appreciated. And subscribe to Exit Rich Podcast. And Dr. Meisner, I can't thank you enough for being on Exit Rich.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Till next Wednesday.